Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And free agency for the 2029 to 2030 offseason is underway. Since the end of the last episode, we did boost our scouting and player development budgets a bit, although these numbers are certainly subject to change over the next couple of months as we head through the offseason. So we're not going to have a lot of money to spend this off season, and as such are unlikely to be significant players in free agency. A couple of things to report on that we have tried to do since the last episode. We've made minor league contract offers to a number of players, including a minor league contract with a major league option to Jason Chourio, who, with his speed and his outstanding defensive ability, could certainly be in the mix to be our starting center fielder next year, even though he hasn't played in the majors in over a year. And he hit just a $199 with one home run and 306 at-bats the last time he was in the majors with Cleveland a couple of years ago. The 24-year-old is fragile physically and does not at this point have what I would consider a major league bat. But as I noted, the speed is definitely there. The defense is definitely there. And if he actually reached his full potential, he could be a respectable enough offensive player, particularly as a switch hitter, to justify getting some pretty serious playing time given the other strengths that he does have. So a relatively low risk contract offer to him at this point, and we'll find out what happens. And we also made a one trade since the last episode. I decided to peruse the trade block, even though likely to wait another couple of weeks until we get to the winter meetings before trying to do anything more significant. And there was a guy who I was surprised to see on the trade block that I decided to bring on board. And it's a pitcher who I've thought would fit us pretty well over the years. The relief pitcher, Orion Kirkering, 28-year-old right-handed reliever. Ground ball tendencies, really good at keeping the ball in the park. He's heading into the final arbitration eligible year that he has, and set to make $6.2 million. We got, as you saw, the Phillies to keep most of his contract for next year. He's looking for $10 million a year over 4 years, so he's really just a rental who we hope will give us a good right-handed arm out of the bullpen. In a perfect world, I'd love to trade Ryan Walker, who's set to make $6.5 million next year, away when we get into the winter meetings. Thus far, there's been absolutely no interest in Walker, but bringing Kirkering on board is a younger and I think better, and at least for next season, more cost-effective version of Ryan Walker. And we didn't really have to give up much of anything to pick him up. Philly would have traded him straight up for Jared Kelenic, who we signed to a contract just about a year ago, or less than a year ago. We gave him a minor league contract. He was decent for us in AAA, like the captain personality. Honestly, with the fact that we're going to have multiple departures this offseason in terms of our outfielders and our DH spot, Kelenic would have been in the mix to potentially make the roster next year, but I think he's basically a replacement-ish level player at this point in his major league career, so we were willing to throw him in. And then to get Philadelphia to retain the majority of the contract, we also included the reliever Seth Halverson, soon to be 30-year-old. Did have a little bit of time with us in the majors in the early stages of this playthrough, but you can see he spent 3 consecutive years in AAA for us. Throws 100 miles an hour, but with the pitching we have and him being out of option years, guy who was going to need to clear waivers for us. And then we did finally move on from Toshimi Masuda international free agent. We signed to a minor league deal a couple years ago. He's spent the last season and a half in the majors with us with Colorado. He's really good at hitting home runs. He's not particularly good at anything else. And as I noted, including Masuda, who certainly did not have a guaranteed roster spot, and Halverson, along with Kelnick, enabled the relatively rich and prosperous Phillies to be willing to keep a really good chunk of Kirkering's contract. So happy to bring him on board. And as I noted, in a perfect world, would love this to be step one in a two-step process to ultimately get Ryan Walker and his contract off of the books in a few weeks. But although the demand for players tends to be higher during the winter meetings, when I think about guys like Ryan Walker and Pablo Lopez, I'm still not particularly confident we're going to be able to get either of those contracts off the books at a price that we deem acceptable. But we'll find out. And as we get closer to the start of the winter meetings and then the Rule 5 draft after that, finally heard back from Jason Chourio. Says that he's got an offer he prefers from the Yankees. The contract demand up to $2.2 million. Still looking for a minor league deal with major league options. I think at the money he's looking for, we'd be willing to pay him $2.25 million, especially if it's only a 1-year deal. The part that isn't so great is that by paying him that amount, given the actually he doesn't have all that limited service time, so I guess there's a chance there could still be 1 year where he'd be making $2.25 million in 2031 instead of something less if we give him the contract he's looking for. But it's essentially just a 1-year deal, and there's still not even any guarantee that it's going to be a major league deal. So we're going to go ahead and submit that offer to Chourio and see if perhaps we can still lock up the option to bring him into spring training and then pay him a little over $2 million if he makes the major league roster. And unfortunately, as we head towards the winter meetings, one of the moves that we knew was going to happen and likely negatively impact our fan interest has happened. Brenton Doyle is gone. He was looking for 6 years and 15 or 16 million. Instead, he got 4 years and a little less than 14 million from the Astros. But the fans still not pleased, and we took a 4-point hit to fan interest. So despite making the playoffs 4 straight years with this Rockies team, looks like we're going to be heading into next season with even lower fan interest than we finished this past season with, in all probability. And we'd certainly expect the fan interest to probably drop a little bit further when Austin Wells, who we did make a qualifying offer to, unlike Doyle, eventually signs with somebody else as well. I guess our big hope at this point is that Wells ends up getting a 9-figure contract and that we get a supplemental first-round pick for his departure. And we've made it to the start of the winter meetings, continue to aggressively scout a lot of potential international amateur free agents, which is hopefully where we'll finish up this episode in just about a month of game time. Some bad news, though. Austin Wells is gone. Overall fan interest almost crashed. We do get a supplemental first-round pick. He signed with the Braves 6 years, $132 million, so a nice contract for Wells, but a massive 10-point hit to fan interest. So we just cannot get out of our way with this fan interest metric. We were 59 when the Offseason began. Picked up a point when we signed Andrew Painter to that extension after we traded for him, but a massive combined 14-point hit from that level with the departures of Doyle and Wells, and that will likely necessitate that we drop our ticket prices even further next year. The goal is to maximize revenue, but with fan interest being down so materially, my hunch is that we're going to need a lower figure than we were at last year to maximize revenue. So definitely a bummer that that first season in Colorado when we took over the team that's having that historically bad year today really messed us up. We actually did more respectably with the Rockies after we took them over with a 51-68 record compared to where they were when we took them over in May in 2025 in game time, and even where they are today in early July in real life. Mentioned that we've had 4 straight playoff appearances since then, but based on the Rockies' historically bad season, that first year we were in charge, even though they played better under us, the fan loyalty dropped to pathetic, and something that we have not been able to improve on despite a pretty good product on the field over the last 4 years, and certainly was hoping when we started this playthrough it'd have better than the 25th highest budget in baseball, closing in on a new decade, but not to be the case thus far. And not that the draft lottery impacts us this year, but the Marlins moved from 8th to 1st, the Tigers from 14th to 2nd, and the well-funded Braves moved from 15th all the way up to 5th. So somebody got very unlucky. The Los Angeles Angels were supposed to be picking number 1, or had the highest probability to pick number 1, and they're going to be all the way back at number 9. We're going to be picking 28th next year, and right now we're also set to have the second compensatory pick based on the recent departure of Wells. So 28th and 36th picks in the draft for us Rockies right now, but that is certainly subject to change as other players get signed to significant free agent contracts around the league. And now we know we need to have a little more in the draft budget, so we've upped that, had to cut player development back a bit. Obviously, this is all still subject to change in the coming weeks. But with the winter meetings underway, we'll at least see what might be out there. You'll remember when we've shopped Pablo Lopez in the past, there has been absolutely no interest in him when we're not retaining any of his contract, and that is still the case. If we were willing to retain 80% of his contract, no one's interested in him at that level either. So offline, I may explore whether or not there's any options to include a good prospect with him. I guess I can do it right here. I don't have to be so mysterious about what I'm doing. Not that I'm going to include the best prospect in our organization in Kevin Roberts Jr. in a trade to get him off the books, but that will be the best example of whether there's anything worth us exploring at all. No retention of Lopez's contract, which is really just a 1-year, $20 million contract. And we include the number 12 prospect in baseball, our former 5th overall pick in 2026, and the top prospect in our organization. And there are finally options there to bring somebody on board, as you can see, but generally looking at solid players in their 30s. I guess an interesting one is Nick Kurtz, who just won the American League MVP for the Oakland A's, led the league in batting and home runs with a 168 WRC plus. He's making $20 million this year and then set to make close to $29 million next year in his final arbitration eligible season. So there are useful players we could bring back. Tyler Soderstrom certainly would be a decent replacement as a left-handed bat for Austin Wells and what we've lost with him. Not making nearly what Wells is set to make. And somewhat funny, similar to Wells, he could also serve as our backup catcher, although he's not nearly as talented defensively behind the plate as Wells is. But don't think that I'm necessarily going to be willing to give up the best prospect in our organization to bring one of these guys on board. But we'll continue to explore some opportunities there offline. The other things I did want to do, though, were to see if there's anything we could possibly do with Ryan Walker right now. Set to make $6.5 million. Would love to free up a little bit of money by moving on from him, but no one offering anything in return. Keeping 80% of Walker's contract, and we can get him off the books at that level. But keep in mind he's got 2 more guaranteed years, so we'd be spending close to $5 million a year on him to get him off the books, and really getting nothing in return at those kind of numbers. Don't know that there's necessarily anything that interesting for us to consider there. And then if we really wanted to shake things up, we could trade away Gus Nieves, although given his popularity, that would just put us down into a distressingly low range of fan interest if we moved on from Pex Nieves. But there are certainly multiple options to do that if we decided it was the path that we wanted to follow. Riley Green, good outfielder, but making a ton of money, signed for even longer than Nieves. Don't know that that makes sense. Drake Baldwin, not as good defensively as Drew Romo, although we're still trying to figure out what type of disruption in the clubhouse Mr. Romo might have after he went to India and met with the guru and really rethought his life priorities in the early stages of this offseason. So I don't know that there's anything incredibly compelling for us to pursue, but I am going to continue to explore some options here during these winter meetings. And we've got a deal done. It's not going to be the earth-shattering move to get rid of Nieves that I know some of you have wanted me to consider, and it's also not going to be the move to get Pablo Lopez off the books for next year. But it is a deal that I think doesn't really require us to give up too much of our future to clean up the books a little bit for this upcoming season, and also hopefully make the team a little more competitive for this upcoming season. We are going to pick up Tyler Soderstrom from the A's and get them to retain the majority of his contract for next year. He's going to be arbitration eligible next year, so it's a rental. He is well known. Maybe he'll help a tiny bit with the fans by bringing him on board. I mentioned we just lost Austin Wells. He's got a little bit of pop in his bat, particularly against right-handed pitching. Don't think he's necessarily a perfect replacement for Wells. I don't think the bat is quite as good, although he has been productive with 119 and 129 WRC pluses the last couple of years. And the glove, particularly at catcher, is not quite as good as we had with Wells, but still gives us a solid major league bat for next year at a good price to hopefully replace some of the offense we're losing with Wells and to a lesser extent Soderstrom. With them retaining most of his contract and us also including Ryan Walker in the deal and getting out of the 2 guaranteed years that he has left. We're going to actually improve our money for next year by about $5 million, which will hopefully help with scouting and player development, or maybe signing a couple of players. We had to include a couple of prospects to get them to retain that much money while also taking on Walker's contract. The less interesting is closer Willie Torres, a former scouting discovery. Looks like a very borderline major league prospect, although does have enough stamina and potentially enough pitches to be a starter. But we think he's more of a replacement level right-handed reliever, so happy to include him. Not quite as happy to include Chase Conger, 8th round pick from 2.5 years ago in 2027. Hit .328 in A-ball this year after he hit .330 in rookie ball. So he's been very productive at the lower levels of our organization. You see, he looks like he can be a very good major league contact hitter. The gap power, the home run power, and the eye, all kind of average. A usable glove for an infielder, but really first base is the only area where he would excel defensively. And given his potential bat, don't really see him as a first baseman. He's usable at the other infield positions, but not particularly adept. Also a guy who could certainly play just about anywhere in the outfield, although you'd prefer not to have him in center field. So I don't love giving up a 21-year-old guy who looks like he could be a pretty decent major leaguer if everything goes well. But that was what we needed to do to get them to take Walker's contract away from us, while also giving us Soderstrom as a very cost-effective rental for this upcoming season. So we're going to go ahead and do it. And that does put us in a situation where we've got a little bit of money to spend now. For the time being, we'll park a good chunk of it in player development and a little bit more in scouting for the time being. Still waiting to find out exactly what happens with Mr. Chourio. Supposedly he favors our offer, and you can see there's also some other players that we've offered minor league contracts to, but nothing particularly exciting happening in these first few weeks of free agency for our Colorado Rockies. And although Soderstrom does not give us anywhere close to the defense that we're hoping to get from Jason Chourio, his price tag keeps going up. Says he's looking for $2.9 million now. So it seems pretty clear to me that he prefers to play with the Yankees than with us. I think with the fact that we have opened up a little bit more money, we'll make one final attempt to bring him on board, a minor league contract that'll pay him $3 million if he makes the major league roster. We'll see what happens with him. As I said, based on the fact that he keeps coming back to us asking for more money, but is still willing to do this minor league deal with a major league option, my hunch is he's just trying to get the Yankees to give him anything close to what we're offering, and that he really prefers to sign with the Bronx Bombers rather than our Colorado Rockies. And as we head further through the winter meetings, figured we would shop Gus Nieves for a prospect package, and very unimpressive options available there. We can get 3 very borderline prospects from the Mets, who are all in their mid-ish 20s at this point, or 2 not so impressive prospects from the Angels. So I think it's conceivable that a year from now we still consider moving on from Pex Nieves, but with what we can get for him in return today, and the fact that with the departures of Wells and Doyle, we can afford him for this upcoming season as the most expensive guy on our roster. Don't necessarily think that we're going to be dumping him in the near term. And some really troubling information here, which I think says all we need to know about the trade settings and the trade AI in OOTP, unfortunately. But we were willing to keep every penny of Pablo Lopez's contract for this upcoming season. So he was essentially free to any team in baseball, coming off of a 14-10 season with a 3.1 WAR for us, Sierra of just over 3. And even if we retained his entire contract, nobody was willing to give us a single thing for Mr. Lopez, and I think that's as clear a sign to me as I could hope to get that we're going to keep him and hope that he has a nice year for us in what will be his final season with Colorado in 2030. And we've simmed ahead a few days through the rest of the winter meetings and continuing on in the off-season, made it to the Rule 5 draft. Would love it if there was a interesting young catcher. Do kind of need a backup for Romo. Nice to have Soderstrom as a fallback in an emergency situation, but would love there to be a better defensive option than Soderstrom, and perhaps a better hitting option than Caleb Lomavita, who right now is most likely our backup catcher next year. So we'll see if there are any interesting options for us available in the Rule 5 this year. Not pick until number 25, so not incredibly optimistic that we're going to find what we hope for, but you never know. And there is actually an option that we're interested in with our 25th pick. Our scouting director recommends that we go with center fielder Brendan Tunick. And I kind of like the idea. Left-handed hitting 24-year-old outfield. Not Chourio as far as the defense or the speed, but I think arguably he's got a better bat than Chourio. He's a guy who's never been above Double-A ball, but he's got some positive personality traits, and basically just will have to be paying him the major league minimum if he ends up making our roster. Definitely gives us a little bit more flexibility to bring Tunick on board. So we are going to go ahead and follow what our scout recommends and bring the young center fielder into the organization. In moving to the second round, our scout recommends we take another player, infielder Charles Davalon, third baseman in the Nationals organization. I'm marginally intrigued by him. He can play a lot of positions defensively, although he's not particularly good at any of them. But we're going to go with a different player. 27-year-old Dylan Cruz is still available. The right-handed hitter, also coincidentally, a member of the Nationals organization, certainly has more experience. Hit 270 in 37 major league at-bats last year with 3 homers and 7 ribbies. So he was very productive in a small sample size. He's fragile physically. He's not great defensively, but he does have some speed, and the bat looks borderline useful. Gives us just another option to consider in the corner outfield spots. So we are going to actually go ahead and draft Dylan Cruz with our second pick of this Rule 5 draft. So a couple more outfielders in the organization to perhaps compete for spots on the roster this upcoming spring. And in the third round, Mr. Davalan is still around. So we're going to go ahead and bring him on board. Certainly no guarantees that any of these guys make our 26-man roster. But with the fact that we moved on from the infielder Jared Cerna this past offseason, traded him away as part of the package that brought Andrew Painter on board. We do have needs for some utility guys. He's not necessarily ideal in terms of his defensive ratings, but some really positive personality traits, decent bunter, decent speed. If we have some injuries, it's not inconceivable that he could make the roster coming out of spring training. And it ended up being a very active Rule 5 draft this year. We were one of 6 teams that took 3 players. The Yankees actually ended up taking 4. Interestingly, the first pick the Yankees made, our old buddy Ryan Feltner from the Atlanta Braves organization in the Rule 5 draft. And Jason Chourio back to us asking for even more money. Says he's looking for about $3.5 million from us. Given that in a perfect world, whoever we play in center field this upcoming season, whether it's Mr. West, Mr. Simpson, in addition like Jason Chourio, or perhaps even the recently acquired Mr. Tunink, is hopefully only going to be holding that spot for one season until Kevin Roberts Jr. is ready to likely take over. I kind of think with Tunink on board, as I said, he's not as good defensively and not quite as good with the speed as Chourio, but I think he's a better influence in the clubhouse. And I think arguably his bat is a little better. Kind of at the point now with Mr. Chourio where I think we're going to let him move on. He clearly doesn't want to play with us. He wants to go with the Yankees. I can't say I blame him for that, but if we wanted to add a good, young defensive center fielder into the mix, although he's not quite as good defensively as Chourio, I think we've done that in a much more cost-effective way, bringing Tunink on board from the Marlins organization. And that does ultimately mean that we've got a little more financial flexibility without the placeholder for the contract we offered to Chourio on the books. Still could see ourselves perhaps wanting to bring on a relatively bargain catcher as a backup for Mr. Romo. You can see with the big hit to fan interest that we took, we're set to earn a lot more money than a year ago and sell a lot less tickets than a year ago. Probably going to need to even lower those ticket prices more than we did once the season begins. So definitely don't like where we are financially with this team, but at least at this point we've got a little bit of flexibility for next year, and hopefully with a good performance on the field, we'll have the fans more excited about this team in July and August than they seem to be here on Christmas Day 2029. And as the calendar turns to January 2030, we've got some mid-cycle reviews of the development lab programs that we're working on. Kevin Roberts Jr., the top prospect in our organization. We've talked about him a few times already in this episode. He's on track with his plate discipline program. Unfortunately, the young reliever Justin Gibson frustrated working on his pitch movement. Trent Clausen frustrated with gap power. Ted Miller frustrated with plate discipline. Ryan Stone really struggling with gap power. Charlie Condon is excelling with his two-strike approach, however, and Isaiah Shader on track with his improve control program. So definitely mixed results overall. Don't love that Ryan Stone, who is still one of the better prospects in our organization, although not a blue chip prospect at this point, is struggling at this point. But we're not going to pull anybody out. We're going to hope for the best and hope that with the fact that we're now investing a bit more in player development than we were when the offseason got underway, based on some of the money we've saved through trades, that ultimately we can get Stone to the point where at least he holds his own by the end of this program in a couple months, rather than actually regresses at all. But no guarantees we'll be successful with that for sure. And tomorrow, when we move forward one more day, we'll find out what happens with Mr. Painter. You'll remember we picked him up after the first day of the off-season, so he's a day behind everybody else in terms of his progress report. And unfortunately, Painter frustrated with his improved control program, but we'll hope for better results from him in the coming months. It looks like Ted Miller's now regressed from frustrated to struggling. So certainly not incredible returns in the early going for this Development Lab 2029-2030 for our Rockies organization. And we've got about a week until the IAFA period begins. Still haven't heard anything more on what impact our refusal to enact any discipline on Drew Romo for his comments following his trip to the Guru will have. If I remember correctly, and it's quite possible that I don't, think we may find out whether there's any ramifications to that when the preseason begins in about 3 weeks. But so far, I'm going to say no news is good news as far as Romo's influence. Still looks like he is the guy he's always been, with his great defense, a decent bat, and a good influence in the clubhouse. And hopefully it'll stay that way, and hopefully he'll continue to want to play Major League Baseball for our Colorado Rockies. And we've made it to the start of the International Amateur Free Agent Signing Period, which is where we will finish off this episode. As always, would love any feedback from the Worldwide Scouting Department on what you think we should do here. 10 players that we have been scouting more aggressively, and fortunately we've gotten to very high scouting accuracy on all of them through having them in our camps regularly, and also aggressively pulling scouting reports on all of them and many other members of the class over these past several months. We are going to have as much money to spend as anybody else this year, given that despite our success on the field, our low budget has us, through the formula, being able to spend some more money. So we can probably get any one player that we really want. The question is going to be which direction to go. 6 position players that we've been scouting more aggressively. One of them is the catcher, Omar Landa, looking for $3.4 million. Looks like a solid, respectable defensive catcher with a bat that could certainly be an above-average major league bat for a backstop. Another player we've been looking at is first baseman Philip Benavides, looking for $3.2 million. Like the durability, like the potentially outstanding home run power and batting eye. Everything else is kind of meh. The defense doesn't look great, not a lot of speed, and the contact and strikeouts could be less than ideal. Somewhat higher rated prospect, at least according to our scout, is the right fielder Omar Gallo. He's a pretty interesting bat with a good personality, high leadership, adaptability, and work ethic. Competent in terms of his defensive skills and his speed, but he is a guy who we think can be above average at everything with his bat, with potentially exceptional gap power. Is a guy with very high development risk, but still an interesting prospect, and at $2.8 million looking for a little less money than the first couple of guys that we talked about. Three of the highest end prospects that we have been actively looking at include center fielder Randolph DeProse, the Australian. Looks like a decent defensive outfielder with a very interesting bat. The personality, though, is less than ideal. Another guy that we scouted for a while before moving on from him because his personality was also less than ideal is Carlos Mal Cardenas. Looks like a decent-looking defensive third baseman with a pretty interesting bat, but a lot of real negative personality traits for Cardenas. And then the two highest end everyday player prospects available, center fielder Jose Ibarra. Looks really more like a corner outfielder than a center fielder with his ratings, like the high work ethic, and a potentially outstanding bat that could be well above average at everything with outstanding home run power, a really good eye, and potentially outstanding gap power as well, although his 40 speed will sometimes result in a lot of very long singles and possibly doubles for him rather than doubles and triples. And then shortstop Chris Mendez, not the greatest defensive-looking prospect in the world, does have some positive personality traits and a very solid, well-balanced bat for him. Mendez, nicknamed Smiling Stan, also looks like a guy who could be a corner outfielder. In a perfect world, with the ratings he has, probably first baseman given his 6'3" height if he really reaches his full potential. So I think that likely Smiling Stan, Chris Mendez, and center fielder Jose Ibarra are probably the two most attractive options to me, although Omar Gallo certainly also has a pretty interesting bat and some positive personality traits. There are also 4 pitchers that I have been scouting more aggressively recently, and some very cost-effective options here. The most expensive is the closer prospect, Alex Barreto. Like the personality traits, think he can reach triple digits. 35 stamina and only a 2-pitch arsenal. But if we were able to add a third pitch for the Venezuelan prospect, certainly looks like he could be a pretty interesting pitcher down the line. His demand of $3.2 million is the highest of any of the pitchers. Another reliever prospect, Scott Bimo Trevelyan, another Aussie. Looks like a 2-pitch guy, decent stamina, could turn into a starter if everything went well with him. Extreme development risk, but think he could throw to the mid to high 90s. The two guys that intrigue me a little more are the potentially very cost-effective starting pitching options, though. Miguel Perales, 16-year-old, supposedly only looking for $310,000. A fantastic personality. I think he can eventually get the velocity up into the mid-90s. Stuff doesn't look incredible. We think his movement and control could both be above average, and he does have the potential to have a 6-pitch arsenal with really good stamina and good ability to hold on runners. And then the highest ceiling prospect among the pitchers, a guy looking for only $1.5 million, is Orlando Morales. And he is very intriguing to me. Another guy with really good stamina, really good at holding on runners, some very positive personality traits with the high leadership, adaptability, and work ethic. Lefty ground ball pitcher, potential 4-pitch arsenal, but he's got a lot of work to do on all of these pitches. He is only 16 years old, but we think his stuff, his movement, and his control could all be well above average. So I certainly see an argument to maybe try to bring on both Morales and Perales and then perhaps supplement them with some cheaper players. I do note, though, that this is possibly the last time we're going to have $5.7 million to spend and really be able to guarantee that if there's a prospect we love, we can bring them on board. And when I look at the potential bats of Smilin Stan, Chris Mendez, and center fielder Jose Ibarra, those guys are both really attractive options. I guess if I wanted to hope for the best case scenario, could offer $3 million to Chris Mendez since his demand is pretty reasonable. Although I don't think his bat, if he reaches his full potential, is quite as good as Ibarra. But offer, say, $3 million to Chris Mendez, couple million, a little over $2 million to Orlando Morales, and then $500,000 to Miguel Perales, and see if somehow you could bring all three of those guys on board in relatively quick order. Tend to think that that plan sounds great on paper. I don't know how executable it really is, but it might be something to try. But I'm just kind of talking things through here for the first time. Obviously, I'll spend some more time thinking about which direction I'd like to go, and would obviously find it helpful if the Worldwide Scouting Department wants to share your thoughts on which direction we should go. We are overweight outfielders in our farm system. I do kind of think that while DeProse is interesting, the personality scares me, but I can definitely make a pretty strong case that when we look at the personalities in the bats, that Ibarra and Gallo are the two most talented hitters in this class, but they're also both outfielders. Not that we should be necessarily signing based on need 16 and 17 years old players who, even if they might be able to help us, are 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 years away from being able to do that. But I think I can at least make a case in my mind that the infielder Mendez, although as we talked about, he's really probably a first baseman, maybe a third baseman at the major league level, and combining Mendez with Morales and Perales is an area that certainly could help fill some of the needs in our organization. But again, I'm going to spend more time thinking about this. I'm sure that there are going to be other opinions on what we should do, and I look forward to hearing them because it is an important IAFA period for our Rockies, and hopefully we will make some good decisions there. As we think about where we are, Chourio doesn't look like he's signed with the Yankees yet, but presumably he will. Still some very high-end relievers on the market, along with useful major league starters. Not that we have a ton of money to spend. Looking at the batters who are still available on the free agent market. Ivan Herrera, a catcher who could certainly help us, but far too expensive for us at this point. If we think about potential options as a backup catcher, probably want someone who brings a little more to the table defensively. Ryan Jeffers is at least competent defensively, looks competentish offensively. Still looking for $9 million a year, though, so that's not a number that we're likely to be able to hit. So might reinvestigate the trade market also to see what's out there. Carson Kelly is a guy that we could bring into the organization. We also do still have, and I don't think I've ever talked about this before, but one of the trades that we made, actually I think it was the trade that we made in this episode. We could have used JT Realmuto to get in the Ryan Walker trade the team to retain more of Soderstrom's contract, but it's not inconceivable that the longtime Major League veteran who we had in AAA for us last year could end up being our backup catcher when the season begins as well. So we do have some options for backup catcher. I can't say that they're necessarily great options, but a lot of decisions still ahead of us as we keep moving forward with this offseason. Over the near term, though, the focus is definitely going to be on the IAFA period. And if you've got some recommendations, it's time to speak now or forever hold your peace. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.